are you? You're a leader. You are at the helm of a community that's been battered by COVID. You are putting up with a lot of disruption. You're dealing with change. You're international. You're a global thinker. And you're also sort of a vessel of our trust. We call you when we're in need. We call you because we trust you. And that is something that you bring with you to work and to your teams. Who are the people who are working for you? Also globals, also internationals, people who are trusted, people who are under a great deal of stress, people who have to deal with disruption, and the last few years has brought a lot of that as well. Much of the time these are younger people. A lot of times they don't have high degrees. A lot of times they're dealing with languages that aren't their own. They're speaking to people every single day, one after the other after the other. They're speaking with people who are in high stress situations. So they are constantly the ones calming people down, reaching out to them, having this human-to-human contact. These are very special people. It's almost a calling. And what is your job when you're regarding this community? You're there to take this group of professionals who are dealing with people all the time and create a community out of a working bunch of people. Your job is to engage, to inspire, to connect them, and help them be at their best. To train them, to support them, and enable them, and empower them. Okay, so who am I? Well, I'm an engagement expert, so I've worked in a lot of very big, very complicated companies, such as Danone, or Philips, or PostNL, or Achmea, and these are very complex, large organizations that have a cultural component to them, and there's always a bit of a, let's say, disconnect between teams and management. And we saw that COVID has blown this up. And when are things going to get back to normal? When are we going to go back and do things the way we used to do? Well, I'm sorry to tell you that it might not happen at all. I think a lot of the things are here to stay. I wrote 2 books about communication, leadership, and engagement. They're comic books. They're not meant to be serious reading, but the messages can be quite serious indeed. But this is basically the average of how you're doing, how you're feeling at work. So quite in the middle. Oh, there's some more stress kittens coming. Okay. All right. So it's basically slightly above average when you think of your own stress, how you're feeling. And then we have one more, if we can switch to the next. Perfect. Now, this is a very important metric in your own engagement. Do you belong to a community? Do you feel part of the thing that you're working on, the group of people? Not the thing that you're doing, not the work that you do every day, the meetings that you go to, but are you part of a community? Is your community better off because you're in it? This is high. This is good. So that means whatever stress you're feeling, it doesn't really matter. This is what matters, because it's your community that is going to get you through those stressful periods. So when you're looking at your teams and the people working for you, the stress level is going to be high. That's the nature of the job. It's going to be high. But if you can build that community around them, that buffer, that is how you get engagement. All right, we can go back. Thanks. We can just switch it over. Yeah, it's okay. Thank you. All right. So the global average looks a little bit like this. This is 2023 Gallup numbers, so they're usually pretty accurate. And our levels of stress are going up at work, even though a lot of us are doing it from home, which we think is going to be a lower stress environment. So what is it about our working lives that are making us so stressed out? And why are we still dealing with high levels of disengagement? So this is generally our levels of engagement and disengagement over time, and we're still kind of hovering in a low zone. in terms of our own engagement. So there's a high level of stress, disengagement, and this is an opportunity to have a look at your own community and see what can be done to lower those stress levels and create this unique place to work. What makes your line of work different, and perhaps those challenges that we can look at? These are high stress environments, so people who are interacting with your teams are going to be in distress. They're going to need something urgently. They're going to be out of their own comfort zones, and they're looking for your teams to solve something. And very often, they are unable to help. Most of the time they are able to help because they're professionals and they know what they're doing, but there are times that they're dealing with situations they can't solve the problem. And if this happens over time, repeatedly, this creates high levels of stress. It's not that you're in these situations, it's that you can't always help. And so constant exposure to this can lead to burnout and disengagement. So that's one challenge. The next one is, by definition, the working environment is going to be irregular. You're going to have night work, you're going to have irregular shifts, which means the people in your teams are not going to have the benefit of their own communities. They might be disconnected from their family, from their friends, because they are on a different working schedule. So you're removing one, not you, but their choice to join your team means that they are removed by one degree from the people that are their own support system. Oftentimes these tasks can be repetitive. They take calls one after another, and they resolve them in similar ways. This is a repetitive structure. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They're short cycle. They're ticket-based, which means there's always more work waiting for them, whether they log in or they log out. They log in to start their shift, and they see, okay, I've got 15 people waiting for me, and they're all urgent, and they all need to talk to me right now. And then I take a break for lunch, and then those same 15 people are still waiting for me when I log in. So this is something that builds up over time. The other thing that is unique about this particular workforce is that there's a rather high turnover. Compared to a lot of working environments, this turnover is high because of those challenges that we mentioned earlier, but also it's a difficult line of work. It's very, very necessary. People have to do this line of work, but there is a high turnover. That means you are constantly onboarding new people. It's a lot of stress for a manager to be constantly onboarding, and it's a lot of stress for the team members too, because they're working in new people all the time. And these new joiners often feel lost, they can feel isolated, and they need to be reached out to specially and made to feel welcome. This puts even more pressure on the manager to build this community, create this community. How do you build a community when you have such a large influx, incoming and outgoing of new people? So these are your 4 big challenges. Now here's the good news. The good news is all of us humans want pretty much the same thing out of our jobs. This is basically the key to engagement. These things. If we can have these things at work, not huge amounts of them, but if we go to work and these needs are met, then we can pretty much be sure that we're doing our best to engage our teams. We need a little bit of fun, some moderate amount of flexibility. We need a place that is rooted, that will be there tomorrow and the next day, it's not going to go bankrupt. We have to feel like we're going somewhere, that there's some direction for us, that we belong to something larger than ourselves. So, this talk is just 5 very easy ways to be your CEO, which is your Chief Engagement Officer. These are very simple, tiny things that we can do every single day that you can start doing tomorrow. What I always start with is listening. Listen to your community. What are they saying? There's a lot of messaging going on. There's a lot of top-down communication. But how much is coming back? How much information is coming back to you? Is there space? Is there room to hear the voices that are coming back at you? And you say, well, sure, we listen all the time. We do surveys, we do pulse reviews. People always have the time. Oh, my door is always open. But is there somebody actually home when that signal comes in. And these are weak signals. You're not going to have people banging down your door saying, hey, I demand that I work from home 3 days a week. That's not the way it happens. These are very soft voices that have to be listened for very carefully. A lot of times people don't come forward and they say that they want something. And then you have the situation where people are discussing among themselves what they really want, but nobody will take it up the chain. So what I like to call radical listening means taking every opportunity you can to listen to whatever is, let's say, a small thing and delivering within 48 hours. And what I mean by small thing is, let's say you're having a luncheon. It's silly, it's small. What do you want for the lunch? You offer people 5 choices. If they vote for pizza, they see pizza. The thing that I want, somebody listened, somebody delivered. You've just built a little bit of trust. And then you go to the next thing. Do you want to have 1 day working from home this week, or 2 days working from home this week? Okay, which day is it? And then 48 hours later, the policy has shifted and people see the results of what they want. That builds one more block of trust. And we keep building these little tiny blocks of trust. You ask a question, you don't care what the result is, all the options are possible, and then when people speak, it's delivered right away. And what that does is it slowly builds trust. Hey, when somebody asks me my opinion, I'm heard and I'm seen. And that means when it comes to survey time, people will participate. And they have that high level of trust, which bleeds into other areas as well. There are a lot of different ways to do this kind of radical listening. You start with the small things, and then you go to what I call casual listening, which is nothing more than just sitting next to somebody in a lunch counter and listening to what they have to say. How are you doing? What do you do? Do you like it here? What kind of things are annoying about the job? What kind of things are really fun about the job? What do you like about your team? What do you think we could do differently? What do you think we should talk about at the next town hall? What do you think our communication should be based on? Little things, but they form a pattern over time. Then you have the big listening moments. You have these quarterly events. You have these big surveys. You have these annual surveys. You also have these deep dive cultural reviews. Not everybody does this. These are external teams that come in. I've seen them 100 times in the big companies I've worked for, where they come in, they scour the company, and they say, what is our culture? What are we doing? And this is called a deep dive. There are a lot of really fun ways to do listening. One is what I call an open mic. This is another way of saying it's an ask me anything, which is just where the CEO goes into a room with everybody with a microphone and says, I have no agenda, I have no speech, I have no quarterly numbers, I just have a microphone, and you. And I'm not going to do the talking, you are. And that microphone is handed around, and the only thing the CEO has to do is nothing and listen. They don't have to solve any problems, they don't have to allocate budgets, they don't have to convince anybody of anything, they just sit and they listen. And they hear what people are saying. A lot of times it's negative, but a lot of times it's really positive too. And it's a chance to build a community where you might not have one before. It takes almost no effort. It's maybe 1 hour every 6 months or so. And the results that it delivers in terms of community engagement is massive. Then the silly one called bean voting. This is just a table that you have with a bunch of empty glass jars and a bucket of beans, and then some choices. Silly ones, like, what do you think the theme should be for the holiday party this year? Silver sparkles, gold, rainbow glitters, whatever. And then the person just comes, takes a bean, throws it into one of the jars, walks away. You see the jars filling up, it's kind of fun. What's going to win? And then you have a winner at a certain time. It's an engagement activity. And what happens? The actual event is the way that people wanted it to be. That means that people are heard, people are seen. It's a very, very visible, it's very silly, it's very simple, but it's extremely visible. And then the delivery of that result is another visible measure of we are listening to you. You have a say in your workspace. All right. Another easy tip is conscious workload reduction. A lot of times the stress is caused by all this auxiliary stuff that people have to do in their day, right? They have to do their work. This is the main thing, the most important thing. They have to do their work. But on top of their work, people have to do a lot of admin and a lot of email communication, a lot of back and forth, a lot of checking in, a lot of reporting, a lot of surveying, a lot of, let's say, community participation. And this is an hour of your time. This is 15 minutes of your time. This is 10 minutes of your time. You add it up over a day, and it comes to an hour a day. You spend almost an hour a day not doing your work, but doing all the little things to kind of enable the rest of your work. What of these things can we reduce so you have more time to focus on the actual work? This means you get higher quality results. You're not stressed all the time for time. And you can deliver actual value because you have creativity. You unlock some creativity. Creativity needs some space. It needs some room in your head to come out. And if you are crunching in hours and hours and hours of work because of all this extra admin, then you don't make space for that creativity. When people come into the office now, you're adding an extra 2 hours. What COVID did to our working lives is it condensed all of our work time into our 8 or 9 hours, which we did at home. We didn't have our commutes, and so we all got used to this high level of productivity. We didn't have our communities, we didn't have our commutes coming into work, and so we over-delivered. We were about 5 to 10% outperforming the way we were before. Now, we were missing a lot. We were missing each other. We were missing the live environment. But in terms of our productivity, that went up. Now, when we come back to the office, we're adding another 2 hours to that long day of high productivity. And that's a big reason why we're seeing such high levels of burnout and stress after the pandemic, which we thought that must have been the worst thing ever. But actually, it wasn't the worst thing ever because it was a crisis and we were all pulling together. Well, now the crisis is over. The workloads have remained the same. Our commutes have come on top now. And then that's the level of stress that we're seeing. Also, the trust might have been removed. During the pandemic, we were given a laptop and a prayer. Go home. We trust you. Just do your work from home. We have no choice. We trust you 100%. Because it's a crisis. We all have to pull together. Well, the crisis is over. Now you need to come back to work. We don't trust you anymore to do your work from home. We don't trust that you can make that decision yourself. That's another thing that's happening. That's lowering our engagement and our increasing our disengagement. Because what happened to that trust? We delivered on our bargain. We provided that 5 to 10% extra, and now that trust is removed again. So that's something that is a little bit difficult for us to understand. And then, of course, with these high levels of work, you have this continued levels of stress and the lack of breaks. And if we don't build in these breaks by reducing our workload, then this can lead to high levels of burnout, which we're seeing as well. So what I propose is you go through all of your rituals and you see which of these things can be different. Do we need to have these long team planning sessions? Do we need to have excessive performance reviews? In every team, there are certain layers of administration that can just disappear and create the space for a bit of creative work. All right. And this leads me to one of my favorite things, which is about the creation of flow. Our daily working environments are the opposite of a flow state. A flow state is when we are really engaged in what we're doing. We're fully present. We're there. And we're not interrupted by a lot of noises or a lot of people's talking or a lot of new requests. We are simply in the moment. And This is where we feel our best. We also perform at our best. This is what everyone wants. It's what leadership wants. It's what employees want. Everybody wants to be in this state. Employees feel better. The time flies by. They get their work done. They enjoy coming to work. Leadership likes this state because people are highly productive and the atmosphere is very good. So for leaders of teams, we want to make sure that people are in this state as much as possible. And the more things that come in and distract us and pull us out of this state, oh, I have to go to a meeting now. Oh, I have 15 notifications. Oh, my Slack channel is going off. Oh, there's another Zoom call that I have to attend to. The more times that we're being pulled away and pulled in 5 or 6 different directions, the less time that we can spend in this flow state. It takes a few minutes to get into this state, and you can get out of it very, very quickly. So if you think about how many times a day do we check our email, how many times a day do we check our phones, it can make you literally crazy. And the other thing it makes us is dumber, right? The more times that we're switching our focus from one task to the next, we lose actual cognitive ability. Every time I switch from one thing, if I run and grab my phone and make a phone call, who makes phone calls? If I do a text or if I read an email, I'm switching from one thing to the next. If I'm writing deep work and somebody gives me a notification that I have to respond to right away, I am losing up to 40% of my cognitive ability in those moments. And it takes about 3 minutes to go and regain that level of brain. So the more often we switch, the dumber we get. And this goes for people in every line, no matter what it is. So what can we do? Try to reduce the number of channels that are taking people's attention away as much as possible. People have to get their work done, but do we have to have 15 channels firing all the time at work? Do we have to have the ringing? Do we have to have the binging, the notifications? Do we have to have everything be urgent all the time? One very simple hack is to make meetings 45 minutes instead of 1 hour. If you have a 45-minute meeting, people are efficient, they get their stuff done, they say what they need to say, we only have 45 minutes, and at the end you have those glorious 15 minutes to check your email, to check your phones, have a cup of coffee, maybe even visit the ladies' room or the men's room, and then you can go on with your life. And that is the maximum way to increase flow during the meetings too. And God forbid, prepare for your next meeting. All right, fun. We all think, well, fun. Work is work, fun is fun. But if we can infuse a little bit of fun in our work in a strategic way, this will increase engagement, it increases productivity, and it increases that all-important feeling of community, that community. This is the purposeful infusion of silliness and laughter and joy into your working flow, even when you just don't think it's necessary. Yes, it is kind of necessary. And I don't mean what I call forced fun. Forced fun are these events or these things that people have to do that's supposed to be fun, right? I think you have a boat trip. That sounded like a real fun to me. And I think you have a gala dinner coming up tonight. That sounds like an awful lot of fun. Forced fun is when you have these kinds of activities like, let's say a group yoga session where people are not given a choice, or some sort of mindfulness exercise that's supposed to be fun, that's not voluntary. And this is also a result of not listening to what people actually want. So being aware of some things are fun, some things are forced fun. What is the difference? I need to listen to my community and see what it is they actually want. Laughter reduces stress. It creates a physical difference in our bodies when we're laughing. Our immune systems work better. We work harder. We don't feel pain. And sometimes working can be painful. We're able to push through and make it through lunch if we're laughing. It actually creates physical changes in the body. And it lowers burnout to this kind of a degree. This is a study that was done with nurses. Nurses have similar kinds of roles: high stress environments, high turnover, irregular working hours, emotional levels of the customers that you're dealing with. Very, very similar working population with your own. And if laughter can help them, laughter can help you as well. And with laughter comes gamification. And gamification can be inserted in just about every line of work. Little tiny things, a leaderboard, a loser board, tiny prizes for having done something silly for the day. Just anything that can be put into a regular working day where people are laughing. And that is not going to take away from the actual work. Finally, this is your superpower because you're in a high-purpose industry, is reminding people in your community every day why they're there, why they're sitting in that chair makes a difference in somebody's life out there who's in trouble. Purpose. Not everybody has this. If you work for a juice company, if you work for, let's say, a yogurt company, which I did, what is your sense of purpose there? I'm not really sure. It's very clear what your purpose is. And I think it's very clear to anyone who's working for you, with you, what their purpose is too. But a purpose builds community, and it gets people to work together, and it gets people to work a little bit harder, and have a little bit more joy, and that laughter coming in. So purpose, bring it back to purpose. Why are they there? How many people have you helped today? What have you done today? Did you know that person that you helped, there was a little child there, she was 4 years old, sitting by the side of the road. That celebration of that moment, that's your purpose. That mother that you helped, that one person, this is your purpose. And in fact, you have this as your special power. Purpose is the foundation of our community. And if you look, this is a very typical one from this year, from Forbes. Almost a quarter of working people feel they don't really belong to a community. They don't really fit in at work. You showed 80%. That's very, very high. But this is the reality, is that people don't feel like they really belong. They don't really matter that much. So as long as we can get ourselves above this level, where people really do feel like they belong, then we're above the global average. And then, of course, you have forced purpose, which is sort of like forced fun, which is a focus grouped set of words that are created by marketing departments that don't even work for the company, that have decided what your purpose is and hung it up all over the walls. That's not your purpose. That's what some marketing group, focus group, has decided your purpose is for a nice fee. But this is not what the people in your community feel is their purpose. And purpose is an action. It's not a bunch of words. It's something that you show every single day. You can build it together with your community. Everybody has their own purpose when they come to work. And it's shared. Most of what the people in your teams determine as their purpose is also your purpose. About 80% of what one person's purpose is at work will be shared by the other person's, because you guys are dealing with similar industries. What brings them to this line of work? And then finally, where are we now with the future? I'm not going to talk about AI because everybody's talking about AI, but in general, we're going to be disrupted again. We went through COVID, we came out of COVID, and there's a new disruption on the way. This one we see coming. We know what it's going to do. We know that it's big. It's kind of like when the internet came out. It's something that is going to change everything about the way we do everything in our personal and working lives. It's going to change our workflow. It's going to help us engage and inspire our teams if we use it correctly, and if we're not afraid to take the plunge. If you look at just one tiny aspect of your job, let's say, as a leader, you're going to create a small campaign for an internal event. Every single micro aspect of that one task could potentially be a co-creation effort between you and an AI, whether it's text generated, whether it's video generated, whether it's audio, or whether it's imagery. There's a role for AI to help you with all the small tasks, and it's going to be a very, very big change. How is your community going to get through this upcoming disruption? What will they need? They'll need training, they'll need some support, they'll need some understanding, they'll need space and time to understand this, as will you.